Okay, so one of the things that about Justin Trudeau and how he got elected, amongst other things, obviously, besides media bias and really lousy reporting, one of the things is legacy from his dad, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who served as prime minister, and his first term started in April 20th, 1968. And then there was a brief period, very brief, where Joe Clark became prime minister. And that only lasted for a very short period of time. And the reason is because he didn't get his first budget passed and there was a no confidence vote. And then, of course, Pierre Elliott Trudeau became prime minister in March 3rd, 1980. Now, why am I bringing up Pierre Elliott Trudeau? Here's the photo of him. It's because if you listen to Canadian media, you would think Pierre Elliott Trudeau did great things for this country. Now, I'm not going to talk about the social reforms because, quite frankly, social reforms and feel-good acts really don't affect people as much as the economy. If you want a virtue signal, if you want to parade around with programs that make you appear like more humanistic or whatever, that's great. But the fact remains that the economy is the one thing that affects every Canadian. Even when the economy is doing bad and you got a good job, it's still affecting you negatively because you could be doing better. Now, there's a lot of times where the economy was bad. One of the worst periods of time is when Pierre Elliott Trudeau was in power. And you would never know it if you just picked up the media these days, because they never talk about that. So I'm going to bring up a few charts. Let's start with the unemployment. Unemployment numbers are coming. Tomorrow, I believe, is the balance of trade, which is going to be important. I think, this is now Justin Trudeau's economy, and they're going to start reflecting on the negative aspects of his policy making. But let's look at unemployment in the time when Pierre Elliott Trudeau, came into power. Now, this is maxed out. Unfortunately, it does not go any beyond 1960, but you can see that the unemployment rate pre-Trudeau is 4 something and below. Okay? Pierre Elliott Trudeau got elected right at this point right here. If you see where I'm marking, that's when he got elected in. Right, and then this is the result. And we have really not recovered for decades. We still haven't recovered to the pre-Trudeau days. I mean, the economy, the unemployment at 5.8 is actually okay, but it took a long time to get it down to 5.8. Look at these numbers. That's 13.2 at the peak of unemployment. Can you imagine that? Canada having a 13.2 rate of unemployment. I mean, I just can't believe a country like Canada can have that high an unemployment rate. But I remember, I'm that old. I was young at the time, but I do remember the period. And it was rough. It was rough for a lot of people. Let me show you a couple other things. The inflation rate. Now, the inflation rate is historically can go farther back. But in modern times, say from 1960 onwards, this is the area where Trudeau came into power. You see that? There's that area. I mean, this is where he started, but this is the result. We had an inflation rate of double digits for most of his reign. And then we finally got that reined in, right? And I have to give credit to other liberals, Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin. But the truth about those two is they didn't really act like liberals. They acted more like conservatives. And in actual fact, they got more done than the conservatives because they could. The conservatives would have just raised hell if they tried to cut programs like those two did. Paul Martin and Jean Crescent were quite influential in bringing back the economy to a reasonable level. But like I said, they had to. They had no choice. They couldn't keep going with the Trudeau plan. They had to do an about face, and they actually represented more conservative ideas than liberal ideas back then. So you can see the amount of damage. Now let's go to interest. Now this is really important because when you see these numbers, you're going to be shocked. Now unfortunately, they don't go back quite as far. They only go back to about 1980, but that still covers Trudeau's time in office. Look at this number. 14%. 14%. That's the bank rate. Can you imagine today if you had a 14% mortgage? How many of you would have gone broke? A lot of people did. A lot of people lost their homes. And it took a long time for that start to get to a reasonable level. And we might be a little low at 2%. But quite frankly, with our debt, any higher than 2%, and we're in trouble because all of a sudden the debt charges go up considerably. Well, imagine this. Look at that level. And that's what Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So when people say Trudeau's and they speak fondly, remember this was one of the worst period in economic history of Canada. Take that to the bank. Thank you for watching.